Yes.
Is all religions from God?
In their best forms, I mean, for example, killing innocent people, I don't think comes from God. So, I think we can identify spiritual principles that come from God, such as compassion, love of God, love of other people, devotion, charity, and so on, self-control. And so, the extent to which we find those principles in a particular tradition, I would say to that extent, it comes from God, and the extent to which, in any tradition, we find something else, then that may come from human beings.
Some of it may come from human beings.
Yeah, but there has to be a criteria, because if you think about it, it's not just like a historical claim, like, was so and so the prophet, was so and so the avatar, was so and so this. It's because, in a sense, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, whenever we feel true compassion, that comes from God, because Krishna is in our hearts, and so whenever someone feels higher sentiments, love, compassion, generosity, patience, and so on, those are gifts of God. So if we look at the religions of the world, we find in all of them that some people take the high road and some people take the low road. And so I would say in any religion, the people on the high road are following God, and the people on the low road are not really. The way I put it is God is not a religious fanatic, and so religious fanatics don't represent God.
Because sometimes because sometimes think about why there's not one religion for all human beings, because sometimes most of the time religions bring make tensions between many people.
Well, let's think about that. For one thing, there have been tensions and conflicts, between many religions in history, but let's look, for example, at Europe, pagan Europe. How do you say pagan in Danish? Huh?
Hedensk.
Hedensk. Yes.
Like heathen.
Oh, yes. So if you look at pagan Europe, they didn't fight religious wars. I mean, the Romans weren't, fighting to bring Jupiter to everyone. I mean, the Romans had their religion, and there was, even in Roman culture, there was high and low religion. There were just sort of rituals and, doing rituals to try to get material things from gods. And there were also people who had a higher sense of devotion and monotheism and so on. But basically, I would say in pagan Europe, basically people did not fight religious wars. They fought a war. They were very explicit. It was for power, it was for wealth, it was for whatever, but it wasn't for religion.
Ego.
Yeah, ego, but they didn't, both sides might pray to their gods for victory, but it was not a religious war. They weren't fighting to spread a religion. If you look at India, also, you don't find, really, let's say within the various traditions that today may be called Hinduism, you don't find, it's not very prominent, religious wars. If you look at the religions that come from the Middle East, the three religions that come from the Middle East, then, it's like you hit the jackpot. Then we start to see just constant religious wars. And it's very interesting because if you look at the geography and the climate of the Middle East, semi-arid or climate or even just desert climate. And so it tended to promote a type of tribal society. And so you have this, what you have is you have sort of like the tribal psychology being imposed on religion and God. So just as, I mean, if you look at the way tribes, they sort of fight, and it's, I mean, you see it in the Old Testament, it's very clear. You can see the sort of the sociology of tribal civilization. And then they impose that on religion. So it's like, literally, my God can beat up your God. And so you have these, I mean, if you look in the Old Testament, if you look at all the three, what are called, Abrahamic religions, in the Old Testament, there's all kinds of genocide. And then, and then in the New Testament, well, not the New Testament, but then in Christianity, not only crusades and inquisitions and all kinds of fun things like that, but also, even if you look at the, going back to the time when the church, or the Roman Empire adopted Christianity, and the persecuted overnight became the persecutors. And then Islam is also impressive in its enthusiasm to violently spread the faith. And so if you look at these, it's interesting that all the major world religions only come from two parts of the world, actually. India and the Middle East. Because from India we get Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, which is very small, but, and then, Judaism, Christianity, Islam come from the Middle East. And if you look at the, so the way I put it sometimes is that if all you knew about religion was the religions that came from India, would you say that religion has been the cause of most of the wars? You wouldn't say that. Or even if all you knew about religion was the religion of the classical world, pre-Christian Europe, you also wouldn't say that. And so what happens is people tend to be, how should I put it, there's a sort of a really bad habit, even among scholars, where when they say religion, what they really mean is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And they just say religion. It's a very bad habit, even some scholars have it. So that's the story there. There was for example, the Roman emperors, they had a certain attitude toward religion. The attitude of the Roman emperors was that, or in general the Romans, was that divine power comes through many channels, and so they wanted to buy into all these channels. So the Roman emperor would actually give money to many different religions, including Judaism in Jerusalem, so that prayers, sacrifices could be performed on behalf of the emperor to get that divine power. So the Renaissance was an attempt to revive that older situation. And if you look at Europe today, or in much of the world today, that old, you could say, pre-Christian understanding has returned to Europe. Europe has gone back to its original understanding, which is that divine power can come through many channels. So
but I think if there was one religion for all people, it would be less tension.
If everyone agreed on having one religion, it'd probably be good, but the only way you could get everyone to agree to that would be kind of, you'd probably have to massacre a lot of people, but, and of course there are some groups that think that's probably a good thing, so let's actually do it and unify the world. It's, even if you look at India, for example, what is called Hinduism, there were actually different groups because people have different understandings. And so to get everyone, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, it would be a beautiful thing if you could have a planet that united with a common spiritual understanding. Yeah, that would be great. But as they say, the devil is in the details. Trying to actually get there. Also because nowadays religions are, they're really connected with things like family identity attachment. For example, people generally learn a religion from their parents or from their little community. And then following that religion and no other becomes part of their family identity, becomes an expression of their loyalty to their family. And if you in any way change your spiritual practices or religion, you are betraying your family, you're betraying your community. And so it's very interesting because if you, in contrast, look at the world of science. In the world of science, if you have a particular theory about something, like let's say medical science, and then if someone says, oh, so-and-so just discovered a cure for cancer, yeah, but that person, that person's Iranian and we're American, so I'd rather die of cancer than take Iranian medicine. I mean, people don't really say that. I mean, ultimately, even like you take all these countries, America, China, Europe, Iran, all these different countries, Russia, and even though there's so much political tension or even military tension, when it comes to science, everybody wants science. Even Kim Jong-un or something, that, remarkably rational and humanistic figure, it said, he wants all the latest gadgets from America. So, but that I think is the problem. You see that we live in a world in which religion is not seen as a spiritual science. It's not seen as an objective thing that you have to, just see what works. Like, as they say, the truth is what works. But it's so tightly connected to, tribal passions and your family and your community and your country and this and that. And so people don't, it's very hard for many people to be objective about it. It's not like, let's say you want to buy some product, like a car. Okay, I'll drive the cars. This one gets better gas mileage. This one is, whatever. People, it's a question of how can we get people to be objective about religion and just see what works, where's the best knowledge. One thing which I think really poisoned everything, and I don't want to, I won't blame one person or another historically. I'm talking about people thousands of years ago, but I think the idea that if you choose a wrong religion, you'll go to hell forever, really made people a little nervous. Because what if you're choosing what restaurant to go to and you find out actually there's only one restaurant in this city that serves good food. If you go to any other restaurant, you'll be poisoned and die immediately. If you believe that, then choosing a restaurant would become very serious. It would be like, oh my God. And what if there was no way to test the poison? You had to believe it. You just had. So, this type of extreme coercion. I mean, in order to try to spread your religion or your church, you demonize every other religion. You say that if you don't join our church, then the most horrible possible things, because actually God is the ultimate sociopath. I mean, what if you read in the newspaper? Do people read newspapers anymore? What if you read online? Sorry, I dated myself. What if you read that a man had, let's say, 10 children, and they didn't do exactly what he wanted, so he set them on fire, and he did something so that they wouldn't die immediately. He wanted them to, that would be too easy if they just died within 15 minutes. So he made sure they could suffer more. I mean, everyone in Denmark would think this is the biggest monster. And yet that's God, according to some theories. So in other words, take the behavior which is attributed to God, and then what if a normal human being acted that way? The person would be a monster. And actually, if God acted that way, God would be a monster. And so, presenting God as an evil monster, just so that you can, try to defeat other religions and scare people is, it doesn't really help. It doesn't help. And so, it's a combination of these fanatical, this fanatical coercion, not allowing people to just think objectively. It's also a question of tying up religion to things like family loyalty and even nationalism or being true to your ethnic community. And under all those circumstances, people do not have the luxury of just making a reasonable choice. I would say most people in the world, psychologically, are not in a position to make a reasonable choice. So, and therefore, in the world of science, science and technology keeps advancing precisely because, more or less, they're objective. Whereas in the religious field, there's not much progress. And since the moral condition of the world depends on religion, not technology, because, Hitler loved technology, so it's not that technology makes you a good person. And so that dimension of life, that part of life which is supposed to make us good people, is almost totally irrational. It's almost totally subjective, irrational, unscientific. And that's actually the reason why the world is such a mess. Because there's not an objective approach to higher values. Humanism doesn't work, by the way. The agnostic or atheistic so-called intellectuals, they say, we don't need religion, let's just bring in social contract theory. We're all rational human beings. We're all rational human beings, and you can understand that if you steal, that may encourage other people to steal, so therefore we should all sign the social contract and all agree to be good persons just as rational human beings. It doesn't work, because there's always lots of people that think, well, I think I can steal and get away with it. Because you see, powerful people that somehow have power, either physical power, financial power, political, social power, whatever kind of power they have, they're willing to take that risk. They think, okay, I'm going to grab power, I'm going to exploit other people, and I'm a gambling man. I'm willing, and if you tell me that if I do that, someone may do it to me, I will take the risk. The problem with social contract theory is that in social contract theory, which is sort of the humanistic substitute for divine morality, that in social contract theory, doing bad things is not really bad. It's not really objectively bad to kill someone, to rape someone, to steal. It's not actually bad. It just may not be in your self-interest. And so as soon as someone says, well, I think it is in my self-interest, and you can go take your social contract theory and throw it into the lake, you can't say anything. Because you don't accept God, you don't accept a soul, so you can't tell that person it's bad. All you can tell that person is it's not in your self-interest. And if the person decides, yeah, I think it is in my self-interest because actually I have the power to get away with it, which is what everyone thinks nowadays, then you have nothing more to say. So, that's basically the situation in the world right now, and that gets to what you said about, and that is that morality, virtue, doing the right thing, not just raping, killing, stealing in the name of God, in the name of whatever. People are restrained, people are civilized by morality, and historically, moral systems come from religion and spirituality. That's just where they come from historically. Someone may not like that, but it's just too bad, because that's what history tells us. And when you have a situation where in religion and spirituality, it's extremely irrational, unscientific, then you get the world we have. So the solution is we actually need rational, objective, reasonable spirituality. And that's what Krishna consciousness is trying to provide. That's the whole point of this movement. And that's why I see it as perhaps our first duty, because first impressions are lasting, as they say. And so I think our first impression, how should I put it? The first impression that the public has of us should be that we are normal, rational people. We're not weird, we're not exotic, we're not like way out there. We are normal, rational human beings, and therefore it's okay to talk to us. So actually all these things are connected. They're actually all connected. Well, that was a long answer to your